everybody. Nice turnout. Thanks for coming. Kind of good to be back, isn't it? We started doing launches here in 2013, so it's good to be back here and off Zoom. Thanks everybody for coming out to celebrate great writing and art by CU Boulder students in our Creative Nonfiction Journal's second volume, the 2022 annual issue of Hindsight. As the Program for Writing and Rhetoric's advisor for this journal, and another title to debut next fall, I'll let the students tell you about that, I can tell you what a fantastic staff they are to work with. They do everything from editorial to art direction, InDesign layout, and compositing to turn the work of our wonderful contributors into each print issue. But staff are also creating marketing campaigns, websites, and audiovisual projects to promote and extend what you have in your hands. And happy as we are to be back live for this launch, we're grateful to our AV team for getting the proceedings to those unlucky people who couldn't join us tonight. My favorite thing to do with these students is get out of their way so they can tell you more about what they do as they introduce our readers. But I'm going to start with introducing our incredible Charlotte Whitney, who will introduce our keynote. But Charlotte wouldn't tell you how quickly she rose from art direction just last year to take on the big picture role of cat-herding, endless communication, and inspiring leadership as our editor-in-chief this spring. She has been inspiring in her patience and vision, helping to finish one and start a second title in one semester. So please welcome Charlotte Whitney.
Thank you, Jay. Those are far too many nice things in one go. First of all, I want to second our fantastic advisor in saying that it's an absolute joy to launch this volume in a physical space for the first time in 2 years. A lot has changed since our last in-person launch in 2019, least of which being the fact that the volume we were publishing then went by a different name, Journal 2020. What has endured throughout all the uncertainties and turnarounds over the last few years, however, is the fantastic student writing we get to publish each year, as well as the dedicated staff we have to publish it. On that note, we wouldn't have been able to produce this volume without the incredible leadership of Maggie McManus, last semester's editor-in-chief, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight. This year, we also started working on a new journal of student climate change writing, Changing Skies. Thanks to the generosity of Scott King's Mission Zero Fund, we've spent the last year running 3 climate change writing contests, awarding prize money to the 2 best pieces of student writing on climate change each time. Changing Skies, coming fall 2022, will foreground these pieces alongside art and other writing on climate change. Now that we're accepting work from both within CU and beyond, we hope to take Changing Skies beyond our campus to tell stories that cross national boundaries. For example, The Rains by international student Malia Hawthorne-Klingler, which you'll be hearing later tonight, is published in both this edition of Hindsight and in the coming fall edition of Changing Skies, and it embodies our aim for this journal. Now I'm excited to introduce our keynote speaker. Michael Elizabeth Sakas is a climate and environment reporter for Colorado Public Radio News. Since joining CPR in 2016, she has worked in all areas of the newsroom, developing her expertise in climate and environmental justice reporting, all the while working on her master's in technical communication at Colorado State University. In a recent piece investigating a proposal by Douglas County developers to pump water from the San Luis Valley, Michael's skills shine in her powerful foregrounding of individual stories, integrated into a larger narrative that engages critically with the issue at hand, and this is just one example of many. As we begin to explore our own climate change writing, we are fortunate to have writers like her to lead the way. Now please welcome Michael Elizabeth Sakas.
Thank you so much. That was so nice. I'm a little shorter than everyone else. Yes, thank you for having me. I've just so been looking forward to this night, as people have already said, just being in person and seeing faces, and I'm just really, really glad it was able to happen. So thank you for inviting me to join you in celebrating the launch of the second volume of Hindsight, which most of you here know what that is, but those who've maybe dropped in to kind of check this out, Hindsight is a student-run creative nonfiction journal out of CU Boulder, which focuses on publishing undergraduate work. And like I said, I'm honored and grateful to be here with all of you. I'm Michael Elizabeth Sakas. I'm a reporter at Colorado Public Radio, and my beat is climate and environment with a focus on Western water issues. And as Charlotte already mentioned, I've been working towards an MS through Colorado State University, but my undergrad was actually in English education, and so, I really love the opportunity to reconnect with students and with professors and teachers. So it's been great to meet so many of you tonight, and I just really appreciate being here. I wrote the preface to this volume of Hindsight, and in it I mention the Marshall Fire and how this climate change-driven catastrophe has forever affected thousands of lives here in Boulder County, and now, since publishing and writing that, I must, of course, also mention the NCAR fire, which forced thousands of others to evacuate. There's such importance to telling stories about how these climate events change us. That change can look like a lot of things. That could mean changes to regulation, like possibly adopting different building codes for homes to make them more resilient against wildfire. That could mean how a community has changed its approach to the management of natural spaces. But I think the most important part of it is sharing stories about individuals and their stories about dealing with the unimaginable and the ways they're adapting and changing along with that. So tonight I'm going to read a little bit from two stories I did about the East Troublesome Fire, which burned in northwest Colorado in Grand County in October of 2020. And I'm sure many of you remember that event. But about a week after the initial spark, high wind and historic drought conditions led that fire to blow up to nearly 190,000 acres, practically overnight. It's redefined the way that wildfires burn here in Colorado, and it destroyed hundreds of homes. Immediately after the fire, I spoke with Shelley Olson. It was one of the most harrowing and impactful interviews I've ever had. She's an assistant chief for Grand Fire, and she has worked to educate locals in Grand County on what they could and should try to do to protect their home from flames. Things like keeping trees away from the house and clearing gutters of material that can burn. So Shelley was out of town when the fire reached Grand County, and she called her husband, who was at home. And on the phone, she tried to walk him through things he could do to better protect their property, like take the cushions off of patio furniture because sparks can land there and then eventually ignite the home. But neither of them realized how precious that time was or the speed at which the fire was barreling toward their neighborhood. Shelley's family went from a pre-evacuation notice to an evacuate now notice within minutes. And her husband had no time to grab anything as he fled the flames. So a few months later, after the fire, Shelley took me to the site of her burned down home, and all that was left there was a crumbling concrete foundation and the twisted metal of cars and tools that were in the garage. And she showed me a small pile of things she and her family had combed from the ashes. Most of it was spoons, knives, and forks from a silver set that was her grandmother's. There were a few porcelain figurines and a class ring that her husband owned that was badly burned. So I'll read a segment from this story. As Shelley Olson walked around the charred rubble of what was her Grand Lake home, she pointed to a pile of things that survived the second largest wildfire in state history. We just kind of did some digging, and all the silver was right around here. This is the dining room area, she said. For the last decade, Olson has focused on helping communities protect themselves from flames. She formed the Grand County Wildfire Council to educate residents on how to best prepare for the next wildfire. I didn't think it would happen to me. No, Olson said. We accepted the risk to live in the woods, and so we have to do everything we can to be adaptive to living in the woods. But when a firestorm like this comes through, what could we have done? But you have to keep spreading the word. Wildfire is not going away, Olson said. Climate change likely means more and bigger fires, and as more people live in risky areas, wildfire mitigation becomes more critical. For the most part, it's up to residents to do the work to protect their homes. Individuals can do a lot, but if a neighbor hasn't cleared of material or kept the lawn green and trimmed, cut down some trees, it can leave homes at risk. But working together can be challenging. So for the story, I actually spoke with Hannah Brenkert-Smith, who's an associate research professor at the University of Colorado Boulder, And she talked a little bit about her work, where she says, there are some people who are going to do this mitigation work and some people who aren't. But there's a lot that can shift in a community. And what we want to do is understand how and why, and how can that knowledge be leveraged. So Brenkert Smith works with a team of social scientists and wildfire practitioners like Shelley Olson to help their community with wildfire mitigation efforts. And she says they're worth it. We're spending so much money on suppression, and firefighters are putting their lives at risk when we could be investing instead at the front end of the problem, Brenkert Smith said. And at that front end, actions by human beings are the key to reducing risk. And of course, she's also discussing mitigating the impacts of climate change in general. What was really interesting about working with Shelley Olson was that she has worked as a public information officer on fires here in Colorado and outside of Colorado, so she really understood the importance of sharing her story. Because we need to hear these stories of what people are going through when they're victims of climate emergencies, so we can learn how to better support them, and of course to better understand how we keep things like this from happening in the future. So I followed up with Shelley a year later, and she gave me a quick tour of her new home in Grand Lake, and I recognized some of those items that she had saved from the fire. She actually had them on display in her home. She found them as a source of, reminding her of where she'd been and what she had lost, but, thankful to be where she was at this point. So on the outside of her home was a thin metal sign which hung on the outside, and it read, "Welcome to the Olsons," and it was slightly twisted and bent. Its surface and color showed a smoky gray patina from East Troublesome's flames. And so here's a segment from that follow-up story a year later after East Troublesome. Olson points to a few other things that survived the fire: a bracelet and a watch, a vase in the bathroom. In the guest bedroom are a couple of small charred figurines. Olson said everyone in her family is handling the trauma and grief differently. "I still don't feel okay," Olson said. "It doesn't feel quite like home. I'm working through that, definitely with a lot of therapy." Part of Olson's job is to talk with people who've had their lives derailed by wildfires. But now the roles have flipped, and Olson is learning firsthand what it's like as a wildlife survivor. She says that struggle started when she returned to the neighborhood where she lived for more than 20 years. And she said it was decimated and it looked like a war zone. Her home was surrounded by the burn scar. Olson and her husband didn't want to rebuild. They couldn't see themselves living there anymore. It was just too much, she said. So the couple started to look for a new home away from Grand County. They considered areas from Evergreen to Glenwood Springs, but Olson eventually realized she didn't want to leave her community entirely. Friends had been texting her full of anxiety and sadness as the first anniversary of the fire approached. "It's really comforting to know that we're all right here and we can just drive over and see each other," Olson said. "It's also hard to be surrounded by the reminders of what happened last year," she said. "The blackened trees and the remains of former homes, and revisiting her old neighborhood is still very difficult for her." So Shelley decided to not rebuild, but she stayed in Grand County. And I spoke with a few other people for that story. One person who decided to move away entirely, a gentleman who did decide to rebuild, and about a year later was very close to finishing his new home because he had recently bought that land and built it, so he was pretty much covered by insurance. But I spoke with one woman, her name is Marjorie Cranston, who's struggling to rebuild because she was underinsured. She's been living in the area for decades. But she's determined to make it happen. She's been buying secondhand items off of eBay and Etsy and sourcing discount material for things like her siding. She wants her home back, and she wants it built exactly the way it was before. So she has an art gallery on Main Street in Grand Lake, and her window has a large chalkboard. The week she lost her home, she wrote a note on that chalkboard, and it said, "The fire took my home, it did not take my heart. The fire took my art, it did not burn my will to create. The fire consumed my comfort, it did not take my soul, and it never destroyed my faith in God. Welcome to my studio, it remains." So she's left that message on the chalkboard over a year since that fire, and so here's a little bit more from that story with Marjorie. So when visitors come to Cranston's art gallery and see the message she wrote after the fire, she says they open up and they talk about their own personal struggles, whether that be the fire or other things. And she says it's been meaningful, I think, for people to see that you can go through something and have hope. Cranston's art gallery has been on Grand Avenue in Grand Lake for more than 20 years. She's an impressionist who works mostly in pastel. After the fire, Cranston's painting started focusing on scenes of regrowth and healing. She pointed to a landscape hanging on the wall that features blackened sticks and trees, but the painting, the pastel drawing centers on a patch of bright green grass in the foreground. She said her relationship with the landscape has changed since the fire. She said painting now feels more emotional. I think sometimes you just paint to paint, but now I don't. I want to paint with meaning, Cranston said. For a while, my work was a little bit darker, but I love color, and now I feel the colors coming back in a different way. So, as I mentioned in my foreword for this edition of Hindsight, these student authors exemplify how writing empowers us to find our place in times of adjustment. And as we've already talked about a little bit, to highlight student climate pieces, there are plans to publish a separate issue later this year called Changing Skies, which I just think is incredibly cool and incredibly important to give, students and beyond a place to talk about their climate trauma, resiliency, and hope. So thank you again for inviting me to celebrate all of your work. And open it up for questions if anybody has any. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Sakas. Hi everyone, my name is Kaylee Stenberg and I'm the managing editor at Hindsight this semester. It's really been an incredible year with the journal. There have been so many exciting developments these past few months that it's almost impossible to keep track. Hindsight, of course, is going national. While we will always include a special submissions opportunity to keep publishing talented CU students like the ones you're going to hear later tonight, we are also very excited to extend our reach all across the country. Now that we are going national, Shadia Nagati, Jay Ellis, Eric Berger, Alex Phobes, and I all had the opportunity to take Hindsight to the Association of Writers and Writing Programs Conference in Philadelphia just a few weeks ago. It was a wonderful experience meeting literary enthusiasts from all around the globe and sharing Hindsight's name, and of course, eating plenty of cheesesteaks. If opportunities like this interest you, I cannot over-exaggerate how much I recommend joining journal staff. Ian will be up here later on to tell you a bit more about the details, but for the moment, I'll just say that we are in constant need of talent, whether your skills lie in editorial, graphic, web design, marketing, video, or business. I think I can speak for all of us on staff when I say that we would love to have you, especially you talented writers who have been published in this edition of the journal. And lastly, every year the staff puts an enormous amount of work into producing this amazing journal, but none of it would be possible without your submissions. We are always looking for new pieces to fill our pages. If you have any interest in writing or art, please check out our free submittable on the Hindsight website. You can also find the link in the journal. I could stand here all night telling you about the incredible pieces that our authors have written, but I think it would be better if I just step back and let you hear it for yourselves. If you could please flip to page 45 in the journal, you can follow along as our first author takes you on a walk through her childhood home. Please join me in welcoming Evie Judge, who will be reading an excerpt of her piece, Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
Okay, this is called Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Come in, just there, right there, through the gate. Yes, I know, but the foyer is unacceptable. So, come in through the gate, step there, right there. I'll close the gate, it sticks a bit. No, I don't remember if the gate was here when we arrived. No, don't take your coat off yet. We're staying out here for a while. Can you look over here? Can you glance to your left? To your right, beneath the telephone wire next to the apple tree. Can you see me? 7, 8, 9, 10, jumping up and down, running in circles, all on that squishy black material. The springs bending and giving, then giving way to tension and duck. Those springs were temperamental, letting go and flying off whenever they desired. It was safe, don't worry. It was as safe as jumping on the incline next to an apple tree and beneath the telephone wire. It was safe. Now, walk with me, and we'll go back through that sticky gate, or walk across the weedy grass. Oh yes, we created a fence with this gate to keep the poulets at bay, but before the fence there stood a cottonwood tree. We felled that tree and built a fence. Cottonwoods don't like to die, and we don't like to die. There's a difference, though. To kill a tree, you have to pull out its roots, and we didn't pull out the roots. Don't you see the new sprouts poking out? Oh well, through this gate, a lot of things have died, except for that cottonwood. It keeps on growing. A neighbor's dog got loose and murdered my geese and my ducks. It was a massacre. The geese, the ducks, then my dog, then my parents' relationship, then the presidency. You remember that year, right? Just a few years back that all happened? Let's go through this gate, but don't touch it. The weather is eaten away at the bungee cord, leaving it sinewy and rough. Let me guide you through. Right there, skip looking at the rows of wood, the boards, the flat-tired tractor. Look to your left, and through the weeds, right there, the plum tree holds on, just as the cottonwood. The plum tree clings to life through drought and thin air. Sorry sight. Sometimes it hangs low to the ground with fruit, and the fruit that the wasps steal. Maybe come back later, and I'll give you a few. We canned them 1, 2, maybe even 3 years. I don't know. I wasn't much help in the process. I was busy outside, jumping under the telephone wire. Do you hear that? The French would say it sounds like cocorico. Armed with spurs and iridescent plumage, only Billy the rooster could have sounded that alarm. We buy chickens almost every year, and last year we picked a rooster by accident. Okay, let's look at the hens instead. Look to your left while I feed them. See those 3-foot-tall weeds? They're growing out from our fire pit. We enjoyed the fire pit until the state caught on fire, until our garage caught on fire, until the chicken coop burned down. Now, in this former fire pit, greedy weeds grow, thistles, and house grasshoppers. Here are the hens. Aracanas lay green eggs, leghorns lay white, and the Rhode Island red lays brown eggs that sometimes have a funny dent in the shell. Look at all that wire encasing the chicken coop. Reinforced walls, green and silver wires wrapped around the wooden frame, and beneath the earth, the wires plunge down. At night, all of these precautions protect the motionless chickens from raccoons and weasels. The raccoons pull a motionless bird through the wires, piece by piece, and weasels slip in like vampires to suck out the blood from the unsuspecting hen. Look, that's all. That's all without going into too much detail about every little fight, jab, good time, bad time, laugh, what have you. Those signs. Did you drive that way? Did you nearly turn into them? Yes, the series of signs back up to about 3 feet away from the train tracks. And if you're turning fast, well, you might smack into them. Those signs are stationed there to prevent the train from blowing its horn. They didn't always stand in the way. Not when our toy poodle crossed the tracks, crossed the highway, and went to live with the rich people for a day. That's when Frankie, the toy poodle, went to Hollywood. Come visit again. Maybe I'll have more stories. Maybe I'll have plums. Maybe I can remember us into this story.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for that. I hope you're enjoying the evening so far. We're really happy to have you here. My name is Liv Wolf, and I am the Assistant Editor-in-Chief at Hindsight. And I just joined the staff actually as an intern this semester, so I wanted to take a brief moment and talk to you all about kind of what that means to be an intern here. So unfortunately, I was unable to enroll in the Practicum course this semester, and that's kind of where the journal and staff gets to meet together and work on the journal. But thankfully, Jay here let me know about the internship opportunities that they have. And through that, I've really, truly felt like a welcomed part of the staff and a huge part of creating Hindsight this semester. And so it's the perfect opportunity if, like me, you can't take the class, or if you just want to learn more about what the journal is about and be a part of it. And I highly recommend that you do that. But that's enough about me. Our next reader tonight will be Beau Ferris, and he will be reading his pieces, I Too, and Can the Mighty Bankar Dogs of Mongolia Save the Steppe? And both of these poems are part of his senior honor thesis, can opener. And these are on the pages 67 and 96 in the journal if you'd like to follow along. Welcome, Beau.
For you poetry nerds, this is a sestina, the first one I'll be reading. So this is called I Too. The screen grabs my eyes, drags them, asks me to LOL, but not out loud. I scroll up or to the side. It's the same post from yesterday, but I will type 4 lies, LMAO, or some other jargon. And I don't say ha-ha to the power button. The side is too far away. JK, it doesn't shut off at night. Never mind. Put it down, then pick it up. Never mind. Illuminating my face, a cold blanket of light, LOL. The penetrative photons are blue. Red too, JK. Blue seeps into red eyes, and I am the same as these emissions of sleep apnea, haha. A blue wave swelling against circadian rhythm, LMAO. Colors indicate the receiver's type. Blue bubbles are free, LMAO. Green messages cut the distance and indicate, never mind. Ellipses are footsteps typing down the hall, haha. Listening to thumbs, 3 dots encapsulate all, LOL. The battery cannot be removed, same. I'm thinking about returning my phone, JK, but I can't. My fingers are bound by 10 violin strings, JK. They are tethered to the screen by railroad ties, LMAO. Eyelids are pried closed with gauze tape. The screen is the same, so it's easy to keep gazing. But who is to define the last never mind? Nothing is easier than scrolling for one more LOL. My thumb, my representative. 2 to 4 letters. A dictionary for haha. Twins who look alike, only when together. Haha. An unjust wound that can reverse time. JK. A silent stare between 2 L's. LOL. A laugh that partitions part from body. LMAO. 3 letters to take away from meaning. Never mind. A simile between us without like or as. Same. Eyes can become blind to the same things that are seen over and over again, haha. As if in training, a breaststroke pushing past water, never mind. Like fingers forgetting the cold, given time will respond JK to anything, habitually dousing fires with LMAO, darkness, and where to look when nothing's loading, LOL. I too have seen the same face staring back at me. He doesn't LOL when the screen is a black sun. I race to load who he is before the LMAO, but my eyes strain to focus on themselves, and the content eventually wins, so never mind. So the next poem I'll be reading is from COVID, and my sister sent me a news article, and I thought the title was kind of ridiculous, so I had to make a poem about it. This is called, Can the Mighty Bankar Dogs of Mongolia Save the Steppe? March comes in like a lion. Bit by bit, its paws linger, partially in between February's terracotta warriors and brown couches, who thrifted themselves and parched green clay. Conversely, the palms of feet smack hard wood floors, eyelids and known faces, and grooves in the sidewalk, once again acquaint themselves with melted snow. Many last names are changed to gardener. Watering cans are inverted, rusted, beside wheelbarrow chickens. Now, drive-through concerts escort this sickness away from used bookstores selling ocean views, and it goes out like a lamb. Thank you.
Hi, thank you all for coming out to what's been a fantastic launch night.
I'm Ian, our Assistant Digital Production Manager. Our journal staff has been looking forward to putting on this event for some time, and so it's absolutely fantastic to see so many faces here, masked or non, in our first in-person launch event since the pandemic started, which is very exciting. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. Our staff is made up entirely of CU students who are joining our staff either via the journalism practicum for upper division students or the lower division, let me take this off actually, there we go, or the lower division internship, which Liv mentioned. Yeah. Our internship, and both our internship and our practicum meet twice a week to work on bringing you guys a really cool print product every year. I highly recommend looking into joining staff if you're a CU student. Your books have all the information you need. It has our links and our contact info if you're looking forward to learning more. And you can always come up to one of us and ask us questions if you feel so inspired. Tonight I'll be reading The Reins by international student Amelia Hawthorne Klingler,
Who couldn't be with us today as she's currently studying in Jordan. The piece is
on page 25 if you'd like to read along. I come downstairs and my mom is on the phone with Tio Jose and Tia Saida again. We used to be able to predict the rains, Tio Jose says. Every spring the clouds would gather low in the sky and then we could say, the rain will start tomorrow. And the next day we would be sitting on the porch, sipping cafe con leche, and the rains would come. My mom shakes her head, and by the way her eyes look sad, I know she's thinking over the well-worn conversation about how things just aren't the same anymore. I've heard it too. Before, everything worked like clockwork. The people of Cuatro Cruces would work the soil, planting each fragile seed in the ground. The rain would come and make things grow, and the village would become green and lush and sleepy under the weight of humidity and growing fruit. Then, after the monsoons had passed, while the soil was still wet, the children would run out and everyone would harvest. The women would gather at church to make tamales, and the trucks laden with fruit would head into town. Then the rains would stop and the tin roofs would become hot with sun. Coffee season. The air would smell like freshly picked coffee beans and Christmas, a promise of another year of crops and rain. That promise is broken now. The rains, once well-behaved, have become a fickle child who hides when he's called and jumps out when he's not wanted. The crops drown, the roads collapse into squelching pools of mud, and Tio Jose and Tia Saida call my mom again. We used to be able to predict the rains, they say. What's happened to our beautiful earth? Often with the clicking of a tongue and the sorrowful shake of a head, the conversation turns to Los Gringos, their supersized companies and supersized machines that beat the earth, squeezing every last drop of life from her. Ravenous for pineapples and profits, they devour the land and spew gray clouds into the sky. Tio Jose sighs. You have to be gentle with the soil. Let it run through your fingers and treat it gently like a lover. Los Gringos in their harsh language don't know how to speak of love. And now my mom is asking about Don Orlando. How's the farm? She wants to know if the lush paradise where she fell in love with my dad still exists. Does the stream still gurgle? And do the manzanas de agua still grow red and delicious? And do the howler monkeys still try to chase away the early hours of the morning with their cries? And I have to watch her face fall as she hears that, for the first time since Cebu cursed his people 1,000 years ago, Don Orlando's river has run dry. Baptisms were strange this year, says Tia Saida. Spraying down believers with a hose isn't the same as watching them emerge, soaked and smiling, from the same clear water that flows from Nicaragua to Panama. I run back upstairs because I don't want to hear anymore. I don't want to hear about the rains, or us being here and them over there. I want the pain that seeps through the speakerphone to evaporate into the warm summer air. I want to be back in Cuatro Cruces, sipping coffee on the porch, watching the rain fall steady once more.
Hello, I'm George. I'm the assistant art director at Hindsight. I'll try not to repeat what's been said and what will be said, but I do want to seriously implore any students thinking about it to join the staff next year. I joined just this semester, and it's been an incredibly enriching experience. Beyond that, all that art in the journals that you hold right now, we receive through submissions, and we're always looking for more. So if you're an artist, or really if you're not, but think you can be, and you'd like to be published, submit your work. Worst thing that happens is we don't publish it. Anyways, I'm introducing our next reader, Becky Harkin. She's reading her piece, Preteen. It's on page 77 if you'd like to follow along.
Hello. Brief trigger warning for any mental health or drug abuse. Preteen. Every once in a while, my 8-year-old body was allowed some prestigious girl time with my mom and sister. These were the good times, when my parents' fights and the family problems were more under the table. Being included during these moments gave me a sense of belonging in my given gender identity, filled with nights of makeovers, dress up, and music sung by iconic women of the 80s and 90s. Articles and items of clothing became magic. My mother's small walk-in closet, a transformative cocoon. My mother channeling her inner Madonna, my sister as Angelina Jolie, and I as Shirley Temple, all combined to make an all-powerful girl team. I watched my mother put on her makeup every day, idolizing the way she opened her mouth to put on her mascara, or the scrunch in her brow when she overlined her lips in red. Walking out of the closet as someone else, complete with blue eyeliner and a clip-on wig, strutting as if on a runway, really does something for a girl. 14 years old. I reached for the handle of the door to the 5th house I'd moved in 4 years. The knob was always unlocked. Despite being in not the best neighborhood, my mom always kept it open in case my sister decided to come home from her most recent bender, or if my brother miraculously decided to show up after leaving us for the past 8 years. I was hit with the now disturbingly comforting scent of ammonia from the cat piss. Every time I walked inside my home, I was full of disappointment. It seemed to be a replica of my mother's mental state. I crept up the stairs, gently announcing my presence, only to get no response. Spotted, Kristen, my mother, 42 years old, 5'3" 3/4 inches, now a whopping 105 pounds, unbothered by my presence. I stood there for a moment. I'm going to homecoming this year, Mom. This guy named Michael asked me to dance, and I don't have a dress, or I don't know what makeup to do, or... Listen, honey, I really don't have time for this today, she snapped. I just thought you'd want to know. I hadn't seen you in a while. Why would I care? At the age of 10, I went through a reading phase. Flipping through the pages of the first Percy Jackson book, I had just gotten to the scene where they reached an abandoned amusement park. Then I heard the front door slam, yelling, again. My sister must have just gotten home. Delore, listen to me, I heard my mother say through the door. What do you want, Mom? I'm fine, my sister interrupted, laughing. Did you smoke pot again? What are you on? The yelling in the front room of our small apartment escalated, but in this post-divorce apartment, it was so routine, I quickly blocked it out. My mother must have done something wrong, again. I heard a loud slump on the wall outside my door. Becky, my mother yelled. God, what does she want? Oh, hold on, I said, just trying to finish a page. She yelled again. Taking my time, I reached for the flimsy handle and peered into the narrow hallway. There was my mother against a wall, clutching my sister's stiff body. It seemed like it was possessed, twitching uncontrollably, like in one of those scary movies Delore let me watch when Mom wasn't home. I stared at what seemed to be white glue forming at the corner of her chapped lips, her yellow skin, the white of her eyes as pupils rolled back in her head. I froze, unable to stop gazing at those whites where brown orbs once held me lovingly. Becky, call 911, my mother pleaded. Handshaking, my chubby little fingers dialed those 3 numbers for the first time. I didn't know what a drug overdose was until I saw one. Thank you.
Wow, that was so good. Hi, I'm Sarah Perkinson, and I'm the AV director for Hindsight. At Hindsight, we do more than just editing. We're also responsible for our website, which has our online content. We've been working on documentaries and podcasts and animations and all that stuff. Once again, I hope our bookstore launch has sparked some interest in joining staff. I've learned so much since I joined last year, and I've done editorial and now AV. Our last piece is called State of Being by Jamie Lammers, which you can find on page 99 of the journal. Jamie poses existential questions that will leave you all feeling more alive and somewhat doomed as well. I really enjoy this piece, and I think you all will too.
Hello, my name is Jamie Lammers. I'm a sophomore here at CU, and this is my piece, State of Being. Here comes that feeling again, like you're vicariously living through yourself. Is that even possible? Must be if you're feeling it. Is this dissociation? Or are you overanalyzing your Google searches from the previous week? Should you even be self-diagnosing right now? Or is that nothing but an overreaction? Most likely a desperate attempt to put words that don't exist to feelings that can't be described. You thought you'd found the solution to your distress through the media you consumed and related with. Comedians singing about the funny feeling that comes when you hear distressing news or get absorbed in scrolling through Instagram. Protagonists in musicals acting debilitatingly anxious in a way that you thought was exclusive to the way you acted, convincing you that someday you will be found. Movies from the 2010s, movies from the 90s, even movies from the late 40s, that somehow managed to portray anxiety and depression and methods of dealing with mental health in unexpected ways. Even those can't fill you now. Even those can't stop the never-ending questions running through your head. Am I doing enough? Am I living my life to the fullest potential? Am I experiencing every moment as I should? Or am I just moving along and making my youth disappear in front of me? Am I not taking the chances I should, making the friends I could, finding the experiences I would if I just got out more? Am I thinking too much? Or, God forbid, too little? And why isn't there enough time or mental capacity to experience everything that can be experienced? You walk down the hall of your apartment as you ponder these questions, overwhelmed by their sheer magnitude. There's something about the way you usually see the world, both literally and metaphorically, that's changed at this moment. Before this, you saw the world as a beautiful place, a place of good people and exciting prospects. You probably didn't even think about how you processed the information put in front of your eyes. Now you wonder if everything you've learned is a lie, if everything you've trusted is something you need to pull away from. You start walking down the stairs, suddenly processing the banister of the stairs, the white tile floor, your hands, arms, and legs moving as more than just your surroundings. Before this, your brain processed the world in various angles and cuts, like a movie. Now you start to process the world from your own POV, your own eyes. You're stuck in a single place in your mind, unable to escape as your thoughts slowly consume you, taking over as you realize what's happening to your perspective. As you reach the bottom of the stairs and head for the front door of your apartment building, you wonder if you'll ever feel the same again. If there's ever anything that can be done about the way you feel right now. About the world, about life, about yourself. Are you in a dream that will end someday? Thank you.
Just want to say thanks to the Program for Writing and Rhetoric's director, Steve Lemos, and to the PWR front office, Linda Nasita, Mindy Slaughter, and Andrew Gillenwater, Tim O'Neill in the Undergraduate Research Opportunity Program for funding Hindsight Printing, and Scott King, whose Mission Zero projects have helped Hindsight grow and will fund Changing Skies next fall. Mark your calendars for Mission Zero's Climate Showcase of student work on April 21st on campus. And April 11th is going to be our last student climate change writing contest of this semester. You can check out all this stuff on our websites. The prizes, by the way, for that contest, $600 and $400, students. Check out our websites to find out more. Thank you for coming, and good night.